Okay.
And you're live.
Well, I'm going. That's probably the next
You're alive.
thing. I know.
Wow.
Well, you never say anything like that to me. Hey guys, it's Keith with BobsCNC, and I'm here today with
He's live.
with Bob, and we've
I'm
got
alive too.
not for long. We got a number of questions to deal with today. But before we get started with that, I wanted to remind you, June 21st, we're going to be at the Maker Faire in Kansas City. Once again, we won't be having a booth. We're going to be guests.
Yeah, we're going to go up the 21st. We're going to be at Saturday is the 22nd. It was actually we're going to be at the Maker Faire. Well, we're driving up the 21st. We're going to hang out in Kansas City, probably get some barbecue.
Oh, yeah.
Kristen's not coming.
Oh,
Said who?
yeah.
Oh, well, maybe she is.
Are you coming?
If it drives you too nuts, I will be there.
Well, that's an invitation. So anyway, we're going to be in Kansas City, and if you get a chance to be there, we'd love to meet with you. Just let us know. And then also October 5th, reminder, we got the Mini Maker Faire coming up. We're trying to put together kind of our first family reunion here for the E3, E4 owners. That's going to be, again, the Mini Maker Faire is October 5th, which is the Saturday, and we're trying to decide if we want to do it, you know, our little event on Friday or Sunday, you know. So if you have a preference, let us know. But Mary's coming, Shell and his wife is coming. Just heard from Heather, who we just met, and she's going to come. Brian K. We even got Andrew from North Dakota.
Wow.
If you can come from North Dakota, I mean, you had to be able to make it. But anyway, we're looking forward to seeing you guys. Had an interesting question, not really technical, but it hurt my feelings. I don't know, I shouldn't take it so personal.
You have a feeling?
Shut up, Bob. This guy wanted to know, he said, you know, you got E3s and E4s. He said, do you actually do anything with them?
Oh, yeah.
And I thought...
Now my feelings hurt.
Yeah. Actually, you know, after you've spent, you know, I start about 3:34 in the morning.
I don't start that early.
And, you know, start our production, get our CNC going, our lasers and that kind of stuff to produce the kits. And by the time I'm done, I am what they call done. and yeah. But the biggest problem for me is as much as I really enjoy learning CNC and understanding more and more, is I've got like zero artistic skills.
No, that's not true. I've seen some of the stuff.
Zero artistic skills.
I've seen some of the stuff he's made.
You
He
haven't
has some.
seen nothing.
I have.
I bought those online.
Oh, okay. I've seen some of the stuff he bought online and acted like he made with the CNC.
And so anyway, I haven't had time to focus like I'd like to be able to focus on the E4. In fact, when we first started together, I thought that was something I was going to be able to have more time to do.
Me too.
But as the business grew, and it's been really fantastic, and it's just, we kind of like got not much to do besides eat and go to bed and get up and go to work.
I think what Keith is trying to say is he's lazy.
God,
That wasn't it? Okay, well that's what I got out of it. Now the reason I don't really make anything is because I don't have any artistic. I love making designs and stuff, but man, when I see the beautiful projects that some of our customers make, I'm like, oh wow, they did that really well. I wish I knew how to do that.
This is something I should have mentioned for the Mini Maker Faire. If you're coming, we'd really like you to bring your favorite projects. Do I need to say that other thing? We want them G-rated.
Oh yeah, please bring G-rated projects for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, the idea is we'll have a booth and we can just kind of show what real customers make with our products, since we're obviously not very good.
Yeah.
Because he's lazy and I don't have any talent. Well, that's what I got out of it.
Okay. I'm at a loss right now.
Okay.
Why am I here? Oh, let's see. Oh, we had a question about Raspberry Pi.
I like Raspberry Pi.
It's probably No, there's.
You know what I like better?
Huh.
Pam makes homemade bread. And then she like toasts it and she puts butter on it and then like an inch.
It's called toast, Bob.
No, just calm down.
Oh, that's really sad. My wife makes toast. I mean, it's awesome.
Are you gonna listen?
Okay.
All right. Then she puts some Jif extra crunchy peanut butter on there.
That's high
and then she tops it off with raspberry jam. And it's like my favorite. I get giddy. I'm telling you, when that's for breakfast or lunch or dinner.
It just doesn't take much.
Okay.
Okay, well, that's not what we're talking about. Though I like raspberry pie.
You like
and
raspberry
I will put Kathy's raspberry pie up against toast.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I love Pam, so I never say anything like that.
Well, I hope not, because I'm going to tell her.
He's talking about using raspberry Pi with UGS. Now, I've never.
Well, that would be messy, wouldn't it? We don't recommend that you put food with your CNC machine.
And I just recommend you don't work with Bob.
Okay, we'll cut out the all
right.
seriousness.
Okay, I've never used Raspberry Pi. I've heard about it. What is it? What's it for?
It's actually it's a microprocessor, a controller.
So kind of like an Arduino.
Yeah, and I think the idea is you can hook the Raspberry Pi up to the gerbil, and then you can run it independently. Here's the thing, guys. I would love to. I've often thought about buying one because I love anything cool, right? And it's really cool. But I don't have any experience with it. So there's a couple guys online that have done it. There's articles out on the web where they hook it to gerbil. But if you're looking for Keith or I to help you with this, we're
Not yet.
Yeah, we're going to have to get back to you.
Yeah, so if you're patient,
yeah,
you'll have to be patient. Which leads to the next question. Not so much patience.
Wow, you're good at this.
Yeah, I like to segue with a baseball bat. Had a question about reflashing.
Okay.
And I've taken our Arduino apart.
You broke it.
To showcase our computer that controls the firmware for running a gerbil. Why would I ever have to reflash that beastie?
Well, actually, the truth is you probably don't have to reflash it. Why do I always have people reflash it? Well, if you change the firmware values on the controller, right, they're actually in this little chip right here, the values. And if you change those values, then it won't work properly. So how can you change those values? Well, as we talked about before, in one of the versions of UGS Cinder platform, there's a setup wizard. And some of them are kind of buggy. So you go in there because your CNC's not working correctly and you change a few settings and it doesn't work, you change a few more. Well, I don't know that, right? Or let's say that you hook to easel, it changes the firmware values. Well, I don't know that. So it's just easier for me to say, hey, go reflash it. So what does reflashing do? Well, it really takes and writes all zeros to the EEPROM or the memory of this chip first. And then it reloads the firmware, the Gerbil 1.1e, onto there. So you get basically a fresh copy the way that it was sent out, right? So if you mess it up, it's just real easy to push the button and put it back, which is called reflashing. So that's why we do that. If you don't actually change the firmware values, then the chances of this getting corrupt are really next to none. Your chances of UGS files getting corrupt on a computer are probably where it's going to be at. It's not going to be in the controller for the most part.
Now, for you guys wondering what the heck the firmware values are, if you look at your manual, if you've got the newest E4 manual, it's going to be page 96, you're going to have a graph full of the different values and how they affect the operation of your E3 or E4. And if you got an E3, it's going to be on page 85. But the question would be, why would anybody mess with those firmware values?
Well, actually, for the most part, I think we have it set up optimal for the E3 and the E4. However, we do have customers that say home's too fast. And so if you look at this sheet and you slip down there and find it, you see that $25 is actually the homing search feet rate, and it's set at 8,000. So if you wanted to say cut it in half, you would type in the console window, there's a command text box at the bottom. You would type in there and you would say $25 equals 4,000 and click enter, and it should okay. And what you just did there, because we were talking about this earlier, it's not a UGS function. UGS has a utility where it's actually changing the firmware on the controller. So if it's a $ value, it actually resides here on the controller. So you can change those to anything that you want. However, your machine may not act the same. If you change the stepper resolution or those type of things, you could turn homing off if you don't want to home your machine. We wouldn't recommend this, but it's possible to run the machine without homing it. You don't need home switches. But the reason we home it, remember, was to sync to the computer so the machine knows where it's at. So if you didn't do that, the machine wouldn't know and you wouldn't have soft limits. So check those out, read through them. If you have any questions, we'd be glad to answer them, but most of them are pretty self-explanatory on what they actually do. And if you don't know, by all means, don't change it.
Kristen, you got any questions?
Actually, yes, I do. So Taylor is wondering is there any way to type in a specific start point command with gerbil in UGS? In a few cases, I need to do this and don't want to start at the beginning.
So you're wanting to start in the middle of the file? If that is your question, I wish they would put that in there too, because the honest answer, or I don't know a way to do, well, I do know of a way, but it's kind of complicated. So say you're running and you get halfway through your project and you got to go to bed and you don't want to leave it on because it's noisy and, you know, it's in the same room. I'm just making this up, right? So you turn it off, right? And then the next day you want to start with it. Well, really the only way that you'd be able to do that is know what line number you're at or somewhere close. And then you can open up the G-code file and delete the top half of the file except for the header information, paste that back in there, and then it would start at the spot. That's really complicated to do, and most people only do that after they've spent 13 hours and they've only got a few lines to go, right? They'll do anything, whatever it takes to get it to work. Most of the time you have to start over, at least it's been my experience. If anybody's got any information that would help us with that, I would be...
It'd be nice if you had some kind of a pause function where you could...
Well, we do have a pause function, but you have to leave your machine hooked up, the stepper motors.
No, I meant, yeah, if you could shut it down and somehow the computer could, shut
Now,
it.
some of the fancier ones, like BobsCNC, they have a start from here, so you can go through the G-code file and push here. But honestly, unless you know what you're doing, you can really screw things up with that too. It won't start in the same position. So the answer for me is you got to start all over. I don't like that answer, but that's the way I do it. So if any of the guys out there that has a lot more experience than we have figured out how to do that, we would love to hear about it. So.
Oh, another question. Sorry.
Yes, we're looking at you.
Kristen just thinks that we're in love with her and staring at her. So she's just sitting there and enjoying us staring at her, I guess.
Oh,
That's it. Good.
That's it. I'm going home. All right. Kevin asks, with the many steps involved in assembling the E4, I skipped only one, the last one.
Oops.
I did take down my spoil board planks, and one is raised up at the end by 2/10 of an inch.
Got a pagoda.
How would you go about fixing that? I thought of just surfacing the spoil board to level it, but that would only cover my machinable area, leaving tiling a problem. Any thoughts on this?
Well, I mean, yeah, resurfacing the area would probably be one method. If you resurface it and now it's below, and so you have a drop off, you could always add material. So
That's not the problem.
Okay.
Because your spoil board hangs off beyond your machinable area.
Yeah.
And that's his concern, his problem. And the only thing I could think of is having a absolutely, like a steel rule, so that you can put across it to see if there's any gaps, and just sand that or plane that sucker down until you have it flat. That's the only thing I could think of.
Well, if you milled it out flat, now you have this area that is lower than the rest.
But he's talking about at the very end.
Well, at the front end, the router bit should go off. But even if it didn't, you could probably take a chisel and take that off. However, let's say that you didn't want to do that. Now you could take, let's say you took out like 1/8 of an inch. I don't want you to take out that much, but just so we can see it, right? So we took out 1/8 of an inch. Now, if we added 1/4 of an inch, it would actually be proud of that surface. So now you could still do your tiling work. So you're cutting it down, and then you're
Right.
adding a piece in the cutting area that would allow it to come back up. So you would maybe take some 1/4 inch MDF or 1/8 inch pegboard and glue that down to it, and then it would stand proud again. So surface it flat and then glue some pieces on to bring it proud of the rest of the table. But not very far, because then your clamp system kind of gets screwed. If that makes sense.
Or if this is not so much beyond ability, but if it's a problem that you just can't surmount, get a hold of us and we'll help you get another spoil board set.
We do actually have. You can buy a spoil board set in our store, so you can always do it that way.
But don't skip that last step.
Yeah, that last step is important on the E4.
All right, Cameron. No, this one has a picture. Did you get the picture that we had showed before?
That's what
Okay.
Dave said.
All right. Well, we'll just wing this.
I thought we were always winging it.
Yeah, true. Cameron wants to know, why do I get these different depths in lines? I also sometimes get them on the V-carve along the sides of the project. And he says he won't be able to watch the live, but was thinking this could be a good topic. So he has a picture.
Right. If you post that picture so everybody else can see, if you can figure out how to do that, or she'll do that later. But we saw the picture earlier. So what's happening there is if you're really aggressive with your cuts, right, then they will be at different elevations, or they can be, because of the rigidity of the machine. It's tearing the wood out instead of cutting it, or it's forcing the router down a little bit. So you'll end up with little indentions. Ways to fix that. Your rough cut, yeah, go ahead and do that. It doesn't matter. But your final cut or your finish cut, take light passes and slow it down a little bit, right? And that way the router load doesn't have any router load, so it's all cutting at one pass. The other thing that you can do is to, like, if you have a step over, cut your step over in half, or even in half again. So if you're trying to do a step over where you're cutting out a whole bit and then another whole bit, you'll probably end up with those lines. Cut out a half a bit wide and a half a bit wide, or even a 1/4 of a bit wide, 1/4 bit. Not for your rough pass again, just for your finish pass, because that's going to be the finish, right? So we want to reduce those tool loads and barely cut anything, right? As a matter of fact, if you use the big bit to cut it out and you get most of the shape done, then you can use that tiny bit. You can speed up the feed rate to make up for the fact that it's so many, step over passes. But you can actually you can make a really clean cut. So I hope that answers the question.
All right, and then one of our customers was asking, when is the bigger CNC coming out? Not an exact date, but is it sometime this year?
Maybe. That's
Wow, that was informative.
well, I really try to be. I worked on that.
All right.
Well,
Yes, maybe.
well,
So that's out of maybe this year, or maybe it's coming out.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
One of those. We're working on it, but we're a small team, so we all have lots of jobs to do. And Keith really does come in at when it starts, 2, 3, 4 in the mornings, right? And he only works. Well, never mind. I'm not gonna. We already covered the lazy part, but he works until he can't move anymore. We all do. That's one of the things I think why we don't get to play around with our machines as much as we would like to is. When I get done here, I still answer phone calls and write emails. So but we are working on it. Right now, we're waiting for some parts to come in. As soon as we have some more that we think is exciting to show you, we'll kind of try to show you what we're doing on there. But we do not have a set date of when it's going to be released. I always say, as an engineer, it's going to be released when it's ready to be released. We are not going to release it until it's been purely, all the testing's done, it's vetted, all the supply management's done, and that just, it can take a short time or a long time, depending on how much I screw up, so.
Yeah, and
So it takes a long time.
it's a dis.
Well,
I wasn't going to say
Yes, you were.
Well, I'm thinking, but I wasn't going to say it. It is absolutely amazing how one piece of the design impacts so much else. And it might be the way the belts lay and how the teeth engage, and is there something that forces the belt to move when you don't want it to move, and how do you fix that? And so there's, we've just run into some things and have had to send out specs to manufacturers to have them custom make some parts for us that aren't available. And every time you make a little adjustment, you've got time that you didn't necessarily plan for when you set out your timeline in the beginning. So we're not trying to put it off. We are really excited about this project.
Yeah, we are. Yeah.
It's just, it takes time.
So maybe.
Right.
I like that. It's maybe.
Yeah. Okay.
Project manager said it'll be done soon.
Oh yeah. By the way, now this is a true story. Kristen is now our project manager, right? She's taken on this duty.
Right.
So, whoo!
What's really great, we didn't have to pay her anymore either.
Yeah, nice.
More hours, less.
Pay. That's even better.
Yeah,
we won.
It'll be out tomorrow. All right. Bill says he's noticed an increased number of broken couplers. He's had 2 himself. What is the most probable cause? And is there any way to avoid having one break?
Yeah, there's really one cause from all the failures that I've seen, and it's called fatigue. And there's 2 reasons that you can fatigue your coupler. And fatigue in engineering terms means that you're bending it back and forth a lot. You guys have done this with a paper clip, right? To break it off, right? You basically work harden it and then it snaps. So there's 2 reasons it can cause this. You don't like my paper clip thing? Kristen's smiling.
No, I'm smiling because Eddie
Well,
said I should get a pay increase.
Oh no. But anyway, so what's happening either is there's a helical cut gap all the way around. If that's closing or slamming shut and opening, slamming shut, you're probably fatiguing your helical coupler. Or if there's a lot of misalignment, it's meant to take up a little bit of misalignment, but if there's too much, then every time it goes around, it's untwisting and twisting, then you'll fatigue those out. How to solve it is to make sure that those things are as close to aligned as possible when you put it together. And the other one is to make sure that the coupler, it has a gap all the way around as it spins, that there's not bumping anywhere. I mean, it's real easy for that one. Take the top set screws, loosen them, pull up about 1 millimeter, tighten them, and that one take care of that. There is a different type of coupler that you can also, if your machine just keeps on breaking them, it's a clamshell type. So it's got 2 halves that kind of have fingers that go together, and there's a plastic piece in the middle. They will take more misalignment. However, buy a few extra plastic pieces because it will wear them out as it's rotating back and forth. So that's what I know on that.
All right. And then Brian asks, is there any way to use a probe bit with the Arduino system? If so, can you recommend one? And then he has a picture of one that he uses with the one, I guess, at work.
A probe?
Probe.
Okay, so I'm assuming that you're talking about just in the Z-axis only, but now I'm looking at a picture. Oh, that kind of probe. Actually, that probe is a touch probe for like a CMM machine, or a coordinate measurement machine, right? It's basically to check the dimensions on a part. And what happens there is if it touches something sideways, it actually clicks off, and you can actually create a cloud model is what they call it, and then you can develop a part from that. I don't believe that UGS has that capability. However, they do have a touch probe. As a matter of fact, if you'll type in gerbil probe, it's a couple links down on my computer, but there's a guy that wrote an instructable, I think they're called, that how to connect it to the E3 or E4, to the same controller, but it will do the Z probe. So you can set it up in UGS so it will go down until it touches metal, and then it'll come back up. And I think you can either set it to where it would go back and touch an X and a Y, and then it will zero that work position. We talked about this a week or so ago. We don't have them here because for us it's easier just to set it down with a credit card, or not a credit card, piece of paper or a business card, and then zero it that way. But there are, if you type in gerbil probe, you will see lots of articles and videos on how to hook up a probe to a gerbil microprocessor. Okay?
Ken and Debbie stated, I have a 1/8 inch zero flute bit for my acrylic work, or they hope so, they've ordered it. Does anyone have recommended spindle speed and feed rates?
Again, if you go out online for that bit, it will give you spindle speeds and also feed rate. The one thing that they correlate, right? So if your spindle feeds half as fast, your feed rate drops to half, right? And with our machine, you're not going to be able to cut a deep slot at 60 inches a minute. You will just deflect everything. So you might have to figure that out. I don't know if you got a router speed controller, but I would recommend that you go on Amazon and type in router speed controller. They're anywhere from $15 to $40, and this will let you slow down the spindle speed, and then keep your passes shallow. Again, we're going to recommend about 0.08 inches per pass. And acrylic, I think you have to cut kind of fast to keep from melting. I don't know off the top of my head, but you should get some good documentation out there. Or I know we have several people in this group that have cut acrylic. Ask online, I'm sure you'll get an answer there at what they've been successful with.
I think that's it.
Okay, so there was one more thing that I really wanted to cover, and I've been learning as I do tech support. Lately we're getting a lot of some kind of error where the controller has done something, an exception, and it happens right after it seems like it homes. And I finally figured out what it is. And this is what it is. The latest version of UGS platform basically has some bugs in it that haven't been worked out. Now, I don't know if they fixed them already or if they haven't, but here's what I'm going to try to explain this to you. On the UGS platform website, they have a nightly builds, which is their team changing the software to try to make it better. And man, they got some cool guys that work on this, and they brought a really neat program. It's by far the most popular program as a gerbil sender. Now, if you're one of those guys that doesn't mind doing beta testing, or as we would say, being a guinea pig, right? Then by all means, use that latest version and sign up on his page and give him some feedback. So if you're seeing these errors, go to the GitHub and go to Will Winder's page and say, hey, I'm seeing this error, and he's got a team that works on those so that they can continuously improve their software. However, if that does not fit your personality, or that's not what you're interested in, go down a little bit further on his page, and he's got a stable set of versions, and we want the platform. So the first one's going to be Classic, which we don't really use, and there's the UGS stable platform. Download that one. It's not as pretty, but it has all of the functions that you're going to need, and you won't have near as many errors. So again, if you're got to be on the cutting edge and you want to help him write better software, at least sign up for his group and give him the feedback of the errors that you're seeing so that he can get them fixed. And if you're not interested in that, delete that latest copy, go back and get the version that's the stable version and use that one. You'll have a lot less time being frustrated by the errors because it's a stable version. So
right.
Okay?
And also, just keep one copy of that. Don't have multiple copies of those different versions.
Yeah, because it writes, if you guys understand, we clear the cache. Sometimes I ask you to do that. You're basically deleting the configuration files. Well, if you have a copy from an old version and a new version, they use the same configuration files. One file may need more information and it screws up the other one and it tries to write it. And pretty soon you've got corrupt configuration files, and then we have to clear the cache. So yeah, if you do this, delete the program, go out and look at the video for clearing the cache. So you want to delete those configuration files, load up that stable version, and then you're done. So, and if you got questions about that, please email the help desk, because we would, if that's what you're interested in, is the stable version so you can do CNC work, that's the one you're going to want. That's the one I use when I use it. That's the one Kristen uses. I'm sure that's the one you use also. Actually, I'm not sure what he uses.
What is UGS?
What is UGS? Thanks, Kristen. Oh man, that was fun.
That was good.
That was good.
Yeah, that was a really good one.
You had me there.
Yeah.
All right, guys, and until next week, I'll talk to you later.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.